It's like we're waiting for Christmas Day over here because we have 5 days until the World Cup roster for the U.S. men's national team gets announced in Soccer We Trust YouTube family. Can you wrap your brains around that? I can't because we've been talking about it for so goddamn long. But we're ready to open some gifts over here. So after you hit like and subscribe, of course, we're going to get after it because that's what we do. Yes! What is up, everybody, and welcome to Omar Gonzalez's favorite podcast in Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Trash Can Cream Cheese Conrad Dino, also known as Jim Conrad. I'm alongside Hollywood Heath Pearce. Heath, you need another extra couple of nicknames. And unfortunately, Charlie Chuckwagon Zimmerman Davies, that's a new nickname for him from last podcast, is on a flight because he's heading to LA for MLS Cup. LAFC taking on Philly. We'll break down that game towards the end of the show. We'll put a little cherry on top for the whole podcast. But Heath, we're getting very close to everything. And there's been such a buildup since we started this podcast. We're going to get answers. We've had a lot of questions. And now on November 9th, next Wednesday, we're going to get some answers as to what Gregg Berhalter and his staff are thinking for our 26-man roster for the 2022 World Cup. I'm a bit of a nervous wreck. You know, there's somebody asked me the other day, I know we touched upon it yesterday, but as this inches closer, I'm actually getting more nervous and less confident. And I don't know where you are with that, but that's my temperature right now. What's everybody else's temperature? Hit us up on Twitter at ISWTpod and let us know what your temperature is.
Yeah.
Or in the comments.
People think I obviously live at a much higher temperature because they think I spend time in the tanning booth. I will say this, Jimmy.
You don't?
Of the 6 years that I was in, 5.5 years that I was in Europe, I never went to the tanning booth once. And I had a whole bunch of orange teammates that would spend all winter in the tanning booths. And they had that little, the little square above their butt cheeks that showed that gave away that they were in that shows they were in the tanning booth. I never had one experience with the tanning booth. So there you go. By the way, I got some merch. I finally got my merch in. You guys thought that you could. All of our people thought they could keep showing up at my driveway every time the merch came and they could just snatch it from me and I never get it. Eventually I got it. It's awesome. I love this actual white hoodie. We're heading into winter, so I can't wear it too long, but I'm just thankful that I got it. But yeah, it's a crazy weekend, Jimmy. Obviously I've been having some short conversations with a few of the players, just kind of asking how they feel. Are they having conversations?
Name.
I can't name names, but by process of deduction, you should be able to figure out the few players that I'm maybe talking to. And people haven't heard anything yet. So I think we're going to see after the end of this weekend.
Okay.
Hopefully Monday. What I'm getting at, Jimmy, is that when we had our process in 2010, we were told to keep our phones on us till midnight. We were obviously in camp. And I didn't find out till probably 1:30 in the morning or something like that. And this is, again, we know this ends in tragedy for me.
I love the story. I love when we tell it.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is we had to have our phones on us, didn't hear anything. And then obviously once you heard and then you saw the group, you knew you weren't going to make it. But then I had to sit around with teammates that I had been in the trenches with, popping champagne, celebrating, partying, 10, 12 guys in a room doing their thing while I was sort of on the outside looking in. And the hotel was shaking with people excited because they had achieved a lifelong goal or whatever, for a second time or a third time or whatever. And that was really tough for me. But now I don't know what's worse. Me being able to look back and reflect and say, hey, I was right there on the edge. I did everything I could and it was out of my control. Or, knowing that these guys are going to get a phone call or a text message at a distance and then many of which might not be called in again, right? This could be the end of their national team career. Hopefully, form allows them to come back in, but very well could be the case. And so I don't think this weekend means anything other than injuries and coming back from injuries and whatnot.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Do you think it's too little too late for anybody that might be on the bubble to make that one play that Gregg Berhalter's like, yep, that's it. He's my guy. I'm leaving the other guy off. I'm going to bring this guy in because did you see that pass that he had against such and such in the Bundesliga? Yeah. I guess I'm thinking Joe Scally right now. Is there anything or Jordy Pefok? Is there anything that they haven't already seen that's going to push them over the line right now? So let's talk about this whole situation from a coaching staff. I wonder if they're looking for, if you're an assistant coach or if you're Gregg, are you looking for that one thing that can help validate how you feel about a particular player in this last weekend of games? Are we really down to that? Maybe with one or two players, and maybe you want to see, okay, if they're coming back from an injury, how sharp they look. I remember when I had sports hernia surgery, we played against Germany in Germany. It didn't go well. I was dying. I had to get into bilateral sports hernia surgery. But before that game, I knew that if I wanted to impress the coaching staff and obviously continue to earn the trust and rapport of my teammates, that I could play at a high level and they could trust me in high pressure situations, I needed to play this Germany game.
Wait, was that the one in March before the 2006 World Cup?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And it was,
that was the most terrifying game of my life, by the way.
Yeah, it was intense. And I was nervous, but I thought, I don't know if what I had done prior to that had sealed it for me. Now I'm the ultimate bubble guy. You were on the bubble, not for 06, but in 2010. Like you feel like you got to take every chance that you can get to convince them that you're somebody they can trust. Now, going into that game, I knew I was struggling. My left adductor, whatever, left groin was really sore. I could barely swing, but you take enough of what you need to take to numb the pain, and your adrenaline when you're running around against Miroslav Klose and Michael Ballack and Philip Lahm, like you find what you need to find to do what you got to do, but it still handcuffs you a little bit because you don't feel like you can play as free as you'd like because you're worried about that next step or reaching for that one ball or whatever it is. So I had that stuff going on, but I didn't tell anybody. And maybe in hindsight, I should have, but I thought I would miss out on that opportunity because Eddie Pope was hurt, and this was my chance to play in a big game against a World Cup favorite because they were hosting the tournament. And if I could hold, and I knew this is what I said to myself, if I could hold my own against Germany in this game, then I feel like that'll be enough to warrant bringing me on the team.
If you could dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball, Jimmy. You know,
exactly right. So I play in this game 0-0 at half. We were just getting overrun for the most part. I thought first half we maybe had one or two chances. We were pretty stout defensively. We give up a terrible goal right after half. They get booed off the field at halftime. Okay, we're playing at the Westfalenstadion where Borussia Dortmund play. They get booed. Jurgen Klinsmann's the coach of Germany, and Yogi Love's his assistant. They get booed. You can see their heads are all down. They're feeling crappy about how they performed, blah, 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 blah. We give up the worst goal on a set piece. Brian Ching tries to clear it. I love Chingy. But it goes through his legs and squirts back post. It hits 4 people along the way and somehow goes in. And from that point on, they completely relaxed and kicked our ass the rest of the way, and it sucked. We ended up losing 4-1. My favorite part about the story is I had to do drug testing afterwards. And Oliver Kahn, the big giant goalkeeper for Germany, who was fighting with Jens Lehmann to be the number 1 at that time, gave up the worst goal to Steve Cherundolo. It popped over his head like a
No. That's not what happened. Eddie Johnson ran into Oliver Kahn, and it slid under him.
Oh, it slid under him. I thought it bounced over him.
Steve Cherundolo hit a long ball over the top. From their own half line. They ran into each other. The ball rolled under both of them and rolled into the goal, and it was like a goal from the half line, basically, or
it was
side of the half. Yeah. That was wild.
So Oliver Kahn was pissed about that because he knew that would probably be used against him. And so I had drug testing, and it was me and him. And you can't pee when you have drug testing. You're so dehydrated. It takes you an hour and a half of drinking water before you can pee again. And then you don't want to over drink your water because then your pee is too clear, and that won't count either for the drug test. It's an absolute disaster. So it's just me and Oliver Kahn, and he's steaming hot because he just made that mistake and didn't get the clean sheet or whatever. And I'm we just got our ass kicked, and this sucks. And I didn't play particularly well in the second half, and maybe that might be it. That might be it for my national team career. And I took that risk knowing that I wasn't 100%. And when I came out of that, I immediately went to the coaching staff or a day later and to my club coaching staff and said, I'm struggling. I need to get I ended up getting bilateral sports hernia surgery. I went to that crazy doctor in Munich. I was back in 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, I played 90 minutes against the New England Revolution at home. I'll never forget it. And Glenn Meyernick, the assistant coach, came to watch me play in person. To the soccer gods, I thank you. I scored the game winner. We win 1-0. And I did just enough. And I think that showed the coaching staff that I was healthy and ready to go. And I think there might be evidence. So I'm tying this all the way back into my original comment that I think there might be some players that are on maybe the bubble that maybe are coming off of injury. I can't even think of anybody off the top of my head. Maybe you can, but that there might be some eyeballs on a couple people, and how they perform in this particular weekend could prove to be that little piece of narrative that the coaching staff's looking for. And sorry, that was a really long story. Thanks for coming to my podcast.
No, I think that's fantastic. And by the way, that was at that Westfalenstadion. I remember it was the biggest crowd I'd ever played in. It was my 6th cap. I remember specifically because I was the 5 caps before that weren't that big of a deal, and this was a big deal.
It was a big deal
going into the World Cup, and I knew I was on the outside looking in there. And
did you start
that World Cup? No, I came in for
Corey Gibbs.
I believe Corey Gibbs. Yeah.
What was the score? What was the score when you came in?
I want to say we were down by 3 because I think only Michael Ballack scored a header after I was in on the near post off a cross. I remember him dunking it. And I remember like watching somebody with that much control and power just dunk a ball like that, and me being like, "Oh, this is wild." I also remember that game in the sense of Bobby Convey was playing in front of me. He came into the game, and it was the first game I ever played in where I had this I left it with this ultimate respect for the top players, considering that like I was playing in Denmark, right? So if you played FC Copenhagen, Brøndby, whatever, you had a good crowd. But other than that, like I could scream to my left and right and they could hear me, no problem, right?
Yeah,
like stadiums were even if they were full, you still had the ability to communicate. This was the first time that I was like, felt like I was in this war zone where I'm like screaming at everyone around me. No one can hear me. I'm trying to figure out what's going on and trying to make the game simple. I'm telling Bobby like pinch in, whatever, and he's just doing his own thing. And I'm like, either he's not listening or he's using the crowd to not listen and whatever it was. And I just remember being like, man, I'm on my own right now. I got to figure this out.
Yeah.
And
well, guess who I played next to? Who I started next to in that game? Mr. Gregg Berhalter. Also, he had hair. So it's not the same version of Gregg Berhalter that we see now. What was interesting in that game is we kind of set up and Bruce Arena had done this before. We set up in like a 3-3-3-1, and it allowed Cherundolo to be a bit of a hybrid. He could join the midfield a little bit and kind of pick his spots, but then also drop in. And it was quite clear that Philip Lahm had figured out, he was playing left back, Philip Lahm, that he had already figured this out within 5 minutes about how to unlock our little formation trick. And now I'm like, okay, do I step into the space where Philip Lahm is and leave, Miroslav Klose, at least getting in better, a little deeper potentially, and trying to run me into the channels? Excellent. Like what you learn at the highest levels is how quickly they make their decisions. Plan A's not on? No problem. We got plan B. Oh, you're good enough to take away plan A and plan B? No problem. We got plan C, baby. Oh, also, if we got plan C, we know that at some point plan A and plan B are going to open up again. So you better be ready for that, And so it's this constant, tug and pulls in different ways. But to get to your point, I also was yelling at Gregg Berhalter during that game, and he was 4 feet away from me, and he couldn't hear a thing. Now, to your point about Bobby Convey, I don't know if Gregg just didn't want to listen to what I had to say or what. You just don't know for sure because it's so loud. Now, that's a friendly in a home country. At the World Cup, I didn't have any issues.
But that was a friendly in the host country
right.
the upcoming World Cup with the team that had a bunch of like that. That was a tune-up. You know what I mean? Like that didn't feel like a friendly in that one. The intensity, the magnitude. Obviously, Jurgen Klinsmann was coaching Germany at that point, right? And he was under a lot of pressure, and as well. So yeah, for a friendly context, I guess what I'm saying is for those matches, they did have that one did have a little bit of extra to it. And up until that point, like you said, the international game, like that was the purest example of an international match versus, a few of my matches before that were January camp. And then my first match against Scotland, I was just like trying to figure it out, like where the ball was, because it never touched the ground. It was just like flying in the air constantly for like the 20 minutes that I played. This was a completely different experience.
What's interesting, I'm going to put a button on this story because some of these guys are going to run into this. Some of them are going to get cut and their dream could be over, and it's hard and it's harsh. But I was in the elevator after that Germany game with Casey Keller, who at that time was playing for Mönchengladbach, and he was embarrassed that he gave up 4 goals in the second half. Whether they were his fault or not, it doesn't matter. He gave up 4 goals. And I was in the elevator, and you know how after a game, when it doesn't go well, you and I have been in those situations where we'll look at each other and in some ways we'll comfort each other, right?
Yeah.
We will figure out a way to say, hey, we'll get them next time or something. So I was in the elevator alone with Casey. And this is after my, hour and a half long being around Oliver Kahn drug test where he's steaming. Casey's not happy either. And I kind of went in there fishing for just a little bit. I just needed a little warmth at that point. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but Casey said something to the effect of, yeah, it wasn't good. You basically, he didn't say I sucked, but he did not say I sucked.
Yeah.
And so this was the one rare time that I had a room by myself. So I go into the room and I just start crying. I just don't stop crying for 10 minutes because I thought that was it. I didn't play well in the second half. It was a World Cup opponent that was a favorite. I didn't really own my space the same way. And I just got most likely our starting goalkeeper telling me I basically sucked. I was done. And then when I got on the flight, it was just me and Chingy. I didn't drink a lot, still don't drink a lot, but I had a drink on the way home with Chingy because we thought we were done. That was it. That was our World Cup thing. And it was kind of fun to enjoy that moment. I actually remember this really crystal clear in my mind. But we're going to run into that with some of the guys. So let's pivot over to the player situation. And
Hold on, Jimmy. I think people are starting to connect the dots between what you said in the last show about Casey Keller's record in the World Cup and the comment he made to you in an elevator, and just your need to, like, those are obviously wildly connected, Jimmy.
No, I'm just saying.
You're healing. You're healing. I get it. You're healing. You're healing. Listen, I can literally see the wounds coming together and starting to close up.
I have tremendous respect for Casey. I was just giving you a stat, and on this one, when I was looking for some warmth, which he's not known for, so he'd come on the show and be like, "What did you want from me? I'm not your mom," Like I get that, and when you're at that level, if you suck, you got to own it. But I also think it was bigger than that, because for me, I had it built up in my mind that was it. Like, that was my game to prove, and I didn't take it and run with it like I wanted to, and I hoped.
But I agree with you. But anybody who's playing at that level, bar a few guys that we know, are critical enough to know and are going to go through the process at some point, right? This is why a lot of people don't like to watch game tape right after. They want to digest it. They want to let it go and then look at it objectively another time where you can be less emotional. It's why people are shocked that American sports have journalists in the locker rooms after games, because your opinions directly after a game, when you're heated, win or lose, are going to be far different than when you're composed and you have a chance to reflect differently or kind of get out of your own way. And I think, obviously in that moment, you're always going to have certain people like that. Thierry Henry was very much like that. He wasn't going to give you a hug on anything, right? No matter what. But there are times that you also kind of want that validation to get you through that moment, your biggest moments of insecurity where you're already down, you're hard on yourself, and you kind of just want somebody to put their arm around you and be like, hey, we'll get the next one. You know
what? I just shared. Here's the valuable lesson here. I just shared an elevator with the wrong guy. He's just not. I needed.
Hey man,
I needed Heath in the elevator.
You go ahead. You go ahead. I'll meet you up there. I'll take the next one. You're like, hey man,
the elevator.
You coming?
I don't like your vibes right now. I'm gonna take the next elevator because I don't think you're gonna give me what I need.
Hey man, you jumping in, or you're like, nah, I think I'm gonna take the stairs. Like, I'll meet you. I'll meet you up in the meal room.
I'm gonna go to the ice machine first. You know what? I'll catch up with you later. So anyway, that was story time with me. But guys are gonna run into that. They're gonna have their own set of stories, and obviously you'll get more of that as time goes on, and we get them on the show and they can talk about it. From the player perspective, though, for this upcoming weekend, as you mentioned right at the top, Heath, it feels more don't get hurt. And we just saw Timo Werner get hurt for RB Leipzig, roll his ankle in the Champions League, and now he's out. He's out until beginning of next year. He's out for the World Cup. He misses a lot of fun stuff for RB Leipzig, an important time for them. And that sucks. And that could potentially happen. So now you're almost tiptoeing around. And for Christian Pulisic, he's probably like, you know what, Graham Potter? I'll sit on the bench this weekend.
Everybody's like, old squad rotation, coach. You know what I mean? Like, a little heavy in the legs.
I got a little heavy. Yeah, I got a little strain, coach. I don't want to push it, So I'm curious, actually, with the starting lineups. We'll get into that in a little bit, probably in the second half of the show. But talk to me about the player perspective. I mean, what do you think they're thinking about at this point? And do you feel like they need to prove anything more? Because let's use Eric Palmer-Brown, Mark McKenzie, guys that feel like they're on the bubble or on the precipice at the center back position. Can they do anything more? Or conversely, like say McKenzie has a shocker this weekend, or Eric Palmer-Brown just has an absolute shocker. Are they out?
No.
Okay. So you think you think Gregg's already made up his mind?
I think Gregg's made up. I think what's going on in these players' minds for outside of, say honestly, Christian Pulisic is the injury concern, right? We saw, there was a number of players from a generation for that 2018 roster group that never played in a World Cup, Jimmy, because the U.S. failed to make it to a World Cup, and that was their one chance, right? I look at somebody like Dax
and an Olympics.
Yeah,
I'm still bitter about that.
No, I mean, and you're totally right. So, but the point I'm trying to make about that is that nothing's guaranteed, right? Tyler Adams, great, he's young enough to play in the 2026 World Cup. Could we have somebody better than Tyler Adams come World Cup time? Absolutely. If you look at our player pool, we could have somebody replace just about anyone in here. So the only one that I'm least worried about is Christian Pulisic, but everybody else is thinking about this is the one, because it's the only one you're guaranteed. And then if you look further down the line, if you're Cameron Carter-Vickers or Mark McKenzie or Joe Scally or DeAndre Yedlin. I guess he's not going to get injured because he's not playing this weekend. But
Yedlin, this is if he makes it, this is it.
But what I'm saying, he's had a World Cup, but everybody else, you're kind of thinking this is all you're guaranteed is now, right? When I came out of 2010, it's like any team that's reached a final or gone deep in the playoffs after a great season, you wake up the next day and you go, I got to do this all over again. Like, I got to start from scratch and I got to rebuild this entire thing with something different and try to get there again under different circumstances, under a different coach, probably. That's a long way to go. And so I think that stress is what people are carrying in terms of like, control what you can control. So you can't, but naturally be a little bit guarded in terms of how you're playing. That obviously tends to lead towards injuries, to be honest with you, when you play guarded. But like, the point being is that, like, I don't think there's one player outside of Christian Pulisic that's playing free, and he's playing against Arsenal. So I just want to see his pulse check on like, where's my man's energy at if he plays. But everybody else, I'm like, you can't help but think like, I need to be selected for this World Cup. And I don't think I think that roster is made up. And the only difference now is injuries, right? Chris Richards, we saw boxing in the gym the other day. I think it's probably too little, too late.
Too little, too late.
But other people. I mean, having said that, they took Gooch, but Gooch was also like well established in the national team, and they thought in 2010 that he could be an asset, and he ended up playing, but like he was pretty far off the mark in that lead up, in those lead up tournaments. Like I don't even think he played in those games. He was just doing like his own thing. And so I think there is just this connective tissue now to like a Joe Scally or Mark McKenzie, Eric Palmer Brown, these guys that are kind of in the depths of the roster, Luca De La Torre even, and where he's at, Kellen Acosta, where they're just sort of like looking at injuries and seeing like their power rankings shift significantly based on anything around them, you know?
So is there any players, or let me rephrase, that's bad grammar. Are there any players that you think fit the Johnny O'Brien mold from 2006? And I think I've shared this story before where he took Bruce Arena selected a probably 65, 70%, 75% Johnny O'Brien over 100%, let's say, Kerry Zavagnin or any other players that were on the alternate list. Do you feel, well, I guess Bruce was hoping that maybe through our World Cup camp, now obviously there's a lot more lead up time, right? So you had a couple weeks of World Cup camp. Then you had a week in Germany before the tournament actually started. And
you guys had almost like a month, right? Like
we did. Yeah. By the time, because we were the 5th match day. We were like the last match day for our group. So it led into like almost a month. So maybe in that situation, it makes sense. But let's say Luca De La Torre, his timeline was to be back to, well, full health, maybe not match sharpness, but full health by the start of the Wales game. Well, you still have another week and a half before you play your 3rd game. Is there any player, or are there any players?
You'll get alternates, right? So you might go with players that you're hedging on and knowing that like you have your final deadline date for FIFA, unless that's actually the 9th. I don't think that is.
I don't think it is either.
So I would guess that's probably, I don't know, the 15th or something like that. So you might go with players like a Luca De La Torre and a Chris Richards, and know that you've got your guys in waiting, that you're having that open communication with. But when I think about 26 players, I don't know anybody in here in the injury situation that, I mean, certainly a goalkeeper, maybe you can get them back to health if that's the difference of having Matt Turner or having it be Ethan
Matt Turner's
Horvath.
another one. Right.
And if it's Ethan Horvath and Sean Johnson, maybe you're only bringing one and you're going to take the chance on Matt Turner to be healthy and fit. And I would say the same if it was Zach Steffen in that position. And then at other positions, I mean, I'm trying to think of who else might be. It's pretty much Luca De La Torre.
Potentially, right? Chris Richards boxing in the gym. I don't know if he really loves Chris Richards, even though he's played, I think, 200 minutes of first team action in the last.
Yeah, that's one where I'm just at that one, sort of just like hey, if you checked 5 of the 10 boxes, I'd take a flyer on you if you were back training again come World Cup time, right? But he's really checking like, are you healthy? Yes, and that's pretty much it. He's not got minutes. He's got no match fitness. He's got no ability to get match fitness. He's also coming out of an injury. So it's kind of like a compound issue of everything where it's kind of going to be hard to then get him to the point where you're like, okay, he's been training consistently, at least at a high level, and he's getting some minutes and he's playing at a big club. Like all the things Charlie sold us on Chris Richards and his environment are the things that are hurting Chris Richards right now in his comeback. And that like your only step up from injury goes back to that, which doesn't seem good enough.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm trying to find, I don't know if anybody can find it that's watching live with us right now. If you want to hit us up on Twitter, ISWT pod, to let us know. I can't find anything yet on alternates and when that would have to be. Other than November 15th is like the final So Gregg had until November 15th to name his final roster, and he's choosing to do it on November 9th. And maybe that's going to take some pressure off the guys for that,
Well,
that last weekend.
That gives them maybe a little bit of a buffer to make the changes for injuries if they can't make it, right? There's a comment in here. What if Luca De La Torre and McKinney are both unavailable game one, aren't both on tight timelines? McKinney's another one, like for sure. If you're going to get him back in the tournament and you're going to get some use out of him, of course you're going to save one of your 26 spots for him. Now, if it was 23, that might be a different conversation. But I would still say McKinney has to be one if he's going to be available during the tournament, right? Even if he misses game one and you're working him into the tournament, fine. Luca De La Torre at 23, no, but 26. I can see that happening. Also, if he's on his way back and you can accurately, again, like you said, the problem is coaches would bring these guys in the lead up, and you could actually get under my umbrella, and we can control this person's environment, what they eat, the rehab they're getting, the amount of time they're putting into the gym, like the way that we can control their route back to play. That's a good feeling. But like the coaching staff and the medical staff, they're having conversations with the medical staffs of the clubs, but they don't control anything, right? And you and I both know, if you went into a trainer right now, Jimmy, and you went to go get have an issue diagnosed, and you had 5 trainers in different rooms, you would have probably at least 3 different answers as to what the core issue is and what it's going to take to get back and things like that. That's what sports science is. It's pretty fluid and it's not that clear. There's no absolute, and we as players are looking for absolute answers, right? We're looking for somebody to buy into. And so it's not that easy to be like, oh yeah, Luca De La Torre is a week out, that's why everything is 4 to 6 weeks and you see it 8 weeks, or they say 1 to 2 and they go, well, it's not bigger. Or you look at Gio Reyna and you're like, it's a year. When they're like, we found the issue, and it's 8 months later. It's not as easy as we think, because our bodies are pretty wild things.
Yeah, and I also think that for everybody that believes and subscribes to the mental capacity of pressure and expectations and how that can weigh you down, and obviously you're so close to being nominated for being on the team and realizing a dream and all that stuff that goes with it, and just how excruciating that is. And obviously Heath's got a great story about it, as do I. All right, we're going to take our first and only break of In Soccer We Trust. When we come back, we'll actually talk about some of the games some of our players are playing in this weekend, which includes the MLS Cup Final. Do not go anywhere.
Italy's greatest soccer.
Is there anything this man can't do?
Europe's most exciting title race.
And there's the goal!
The battle for the Scudetto is on. Stream every Stereo match live, exclusively on Paramount+.
Welcome back to In Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Heath Pearce, because Zimmerman, also known as Chuck Wagon Davies, is on a plane to LA for MLS Cup. We're going to break that game down in a second, Heath. We'll get into a little bit more of the details as the 2 number 1 seeds of each conference are playing against each other in the final for the first time since 2003. That's how it should be. And I'm surprised it's taken so long for that to happen once again. But I'm just going to whip through a list of some of the big names.
Hey, real quick though, Jimmy.
What?
Is Charlie not flying private? Is he not on Air Chuckwagon? Is he not on Air Davies, where he should have a good enough connection to Is Charlie hitting the recession, getting hit by the recession a little harder than
maybe the gas is a little bit too much for his private jet and he's got to go commercial.
Okay.
I mean, I just can't even visualize.
Or he's trying to just understand what we go through, He's just trying to he's
trying to relate to the little person. The lay person, as it were. Yeah. All right, so here's some of the games for you to watch this weekend if you want to see how sharp our players are playing ahead of this big announcement. Again, on Wednesday, the U.S. men's national team roster is dropping on November 9th. I think our Charlie Chuck Wagon Davies will be there, assuming he can get a flight back on his personal plane to New York City. All right, Joe Scally playing on Friday. That's today against Stuttgart. That'll be on ESPN+. Mark McKenzie got another big one as Genk continues to roll in the Belgian Pro League. They're on top of the table, and I think they're unbeaten in 75 million games. It's pretty impressive. We got Eric Palmer Brown and Troyes taking on Auxerre. That's also going on today. So a couple center backs that are on the cusp there. Gio Reyna is playing against Bochum on Saturday morning, first thing. Kevin Paredes is hurt. He's not going to be playing. Tyler Adams and Brendan Aronson taking on Bournemouth. First thing, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. I want to definitely watch that one. Fulham is taking on Manchester City. So Tim Ream, I think he's on the plane to Qatar. But
me too. I'm almost positive. And some of that's from intel, but some of that's also just from the dire situation.
It just makes sense at this point. Given the situation, it just makes sense. Josh Sargent is one to watch. His Norwich are taking on Rotherham on Saturday morning. Dean Smith, the coach of Norwich, said that they were just being precautious. He should start, but all eyes on that one to see if he plays because I think he will make the roster. Cameron Carter-Vickers is another one as Celtic take on Dundee. He got rested because of a sore knee. Heath laughed that one off, saying he just doesn't want to risk it and doesn't want to get hurt, as he made a wise decision not to go get embarrassed by Real Madrid in the Champions League on match day 6. Ethan Horvath, Luton Town taking on Blackpool. We'll see Zach Steffen and Burrow taking on Bristol City. Austin Trusty, for all those Austin Trusty super fans out there, if you think he's got a late shout, I don't think it's going to be his cycle this time around, but he's taking on Stoke. Ricardo Pepi, can he score again before the big announcement? I think he's in the team for sure. Groningen's taking on Utrecht. Matt Turner still hurt. They're taking on Chelsea. Pulisic is on the opposite side of that as they take on Arsenal. We'll see if he gets any minutes. Malik Tillman, James Sands. They're taking on Rangers are taking on St. John's.
Tillman, that's another one that
I don't know, man. I think he's on the fence. I think he's the replacement for De La Torre. I think he's for sure an alternate, Malik Tillman. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to try to gauge where De La Torre is. And if De La Torre is out, then Tillman's in. That's what I think. Haji Wright, if you believe in Haji Wright, he's playing in the Turkish Super League on Sunday. Jordy Pefok taking on Bayer Leverkusen. Yunus Musa taking on Real Sociedad with Valencia. Reggie Cannon taking on Rio Ave in Portugal. Ledesma started recently and got a good amount of minutes. Exciting. I think this cycle's too soon for him. I think he'll be a part of the next one, but he's got big talent. Timo Weah taking on Rennes. And Weston McKennie and Juve taking on Inter. That's a big game, but I don't think Weston McKennie is going to be playing in that one. So those are all the ones. I don't know if anything stands out for you, Heath, but I wanted to let everybody know that there's some games to watch. And I think that Josh Sargent really stands out for me just to see if he starts or not.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Sargent is one. I think Sam Vines is the only other person I can think of.
They're playing Anderlecht. I didn't bring him up because I think he's out. I think he's out. He's
probably the only one that I think has significance in the grand scheme of things, with Serginho Dest having a little bit of an injury issue right now. So you're talking about depth. Joe Scally could maybe give you both sides, but in terms of natural sided, maybe Sam Vines is. I don't think he's shown enough trust or built enough trust with Gregg Berhalter, but he's one that I think could come down to the wire as well, depending on where people fall on the injury list of things. So I could see him being an alternate as well. I don't know how many alternates you can have. I think there was 30 in our cycles, and you could have 7 alternates.
I bet you they give you
23.
4. I bet you just still have 30. You just have 26 rostered players, and you can get 4 alternates. That's my guess. I can't find any language anywhere on the internet. So the internet's
well. Somebody was saying earlier that they were saying they had up till the day that the Mexico coach had said that they have up until the day before. Trying to find out where it was. The day before the first match to change out an injured player. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know where that
all right.
went, but somewhere.
I believe everything I hear and read on the internet. So that sounds good
me
to me.
Too. All right. Me too. Me too. But yeah, so man, it's dicey, but I like this. I like this Chelsea Arsenal game on Sunday. That's kind of tight.
I bet you Pulisic starts because everybody else is going to want to be rested.
I know, dude. Pulisic is going to be the guy that's like, what do you mean?
What do you mean?
No, I earned this. You didn't, you know, and everybody's like, yeah, for sure you did, dude. Go out there. Go have fun. Go have fun. Man. We'll be over here on
okay, let's do this. Let's play a quick game before we break down MLS Cup Final, okay? Which player do you think in our player pool is going to blow up in this World Cup and then make a big move in January? It seems like Pulisic could be that, but I get the sense that if he blows up in the World Cup, Chelsea definitely in their American under Todd Bowley are not going to let him go. He's such an American asset, as it were, such a marketing vehicle for him to have an American at Chelsea. Is there anybody that maybe surprises you?
Wait, what was your question again? I was just reading this compliment where John Hurt had just said Heath deserved way more caps. He didn't fit the profile of the old style of the U.S. men's national team. He's a really good crosser and offensive. I just want to say thank you, John. I'll Venmo you whatever you want to say something like that. Jimmy is the old style. I like these banging heads guys. Not a lot of technique. I was very technical, very, very pacey player. So I understand. Listen, and I agree with you. I didn't fit into this new generation. No problem, dude.
I'm going to change your mom's phone number or name in my phone to John Hurt because that's unbelievable. There's no way.
That's the problem with YouTube is that I can create as many burner names as I want. I'm not forced to be verified, but you can do that on Twitter now for $8.
I love that you didn't question that I have your mom's number in my phone, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah, so I believe everything I hear, Jimmy. So you know.
So which player do you think? Let's say outside of Christian Pulisic, he seems like the obvious one. And this goes for everybody in the audience right now, and anybody listening later and want to hit us up on Twitter. ISWT Pod, drop us a follow too. That would mean a lot. which player do you think out of our player pool, minus Christian Pulisic, could blow up based on their 3 performances, hopefully more, 4 or 5 performances in the World Cup? That's going to have them make a big move either in the January transfer window or the following summer transfer window. Just as like this person, I think Yunus Musa might feels kind of obvious too. But
but I think Brendan Aronson, Tyler Adams, because they're at Leeds is a massive club, but they're at a struggling club in Leeds, depending on the day of the week, obviously, that they're struggling or not, or thriving with where they're at, obviously doing great things. I think those 2 are going to be on the biggest stage and in the shop window for them to be able to see kind of where they can go next. Potentially, can they continue that vertical mobility? I think Timo Weah has the ability to put himself on the map.
Good shout on Timo Weah.
I think
Adams is good too. There's already been interest from Manchester United for him. So
yeah, but I think a second center back, whoever's going to play, if it is Ream and Zimmerman, maybe not. But if there is one of those younger center backs that gets a run out, whether that's Cameron Carter-Vickers or it's Mark McKenzie or it's Eric Palmer Brown. And one of these guys have an opportunity to kind of go upward. I think Joe Scally has a lot of upside if he makes the team and gets some minutes. Trying to think who else would fit into that category. Oh yeah, Ricardo Pepi. That's the biggest one for me. If he has the hardest part is like we purposely avoid goal scorers because the only way that you have that upper mobility in a World Cup is to score goals. Even though I've always been impressed with way more than what his ability to score goals. I love his ability to score goals.
Yeah,
but he brings a lot to the table that I think makes him a good striker and young still. So that was a little bit hard to predict, but those are the players I think have the ability to or Kellen Acosta, even if he comes in late and he shows set pieces and shows that fight and ability to like step into some another environment outside of Major League Soccer.
I guess that's one of the good parts about having a young team. You could probably name 8 players so that they all step up and play well, which is cool because we're getting a lot of different names in the comments to Jedi, to Pepi, to Weah, to Adams, to Musa. And Des could, obviously he's already played at some big clubs, but kind of solidify his spot at Milan and start to look at him as the future. There's a whole bunch of different things, and I think that's super cool. Another part that I like about it is that we all can see that any of these guys could blow up because we believe in what they have at their disposal and how much potential that they have. So that's also really cool. It's not like we're all focused out. I know Pulisic's the obvious, but I just feel like we have some variety in our choices. I think that says a lot about our national team.
Yeah. Well, what you're saying right now is, Musa's the obvious choice because he plays at Valencia and he's a young superstar, right? You're like, but Timo Weah, he came from PSG and he's at Lille. And now his next club will be even bigger. Serginho Dest, he could establish himself as a starter of a team that's in the knockout rounds of the Champions League that are current champions of Serie A. When we go back one generation, you look at Clint Dempsey and you're like, hopefully he gets minutes when he's at Spurs, right? You look at Michael Bradley taking all the steps to get to Roma and you're like, okay, he kind of hit that was the ceiling for him, right? And you're like, well, if he gets 5 minutes, we've got a guy playing at Roma and we're going to call 5 minutes as many minutes as we want because we got a guy at Roma. Now you've got all these players not in the prime of their careers when those guys went to their biggest level, playing at big clubs, and their lateral or vertical movements for their next 2-3 moves likely, right? I don't see Tyler Adams not going to a bigger club next. I don't see Brendan Aronson not going to a bigger club next because you can just see how young they are, the impact they're having on games, and they're not even close to their sort of full capabilities. So yeah, it's an amazing time, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's exciting. I appreciate everybody's comments, and that feels like a really nice, positive way to kind of put a button on all of our conversations today. Yeah. But I want to break down the MLS Cup Final. We have the 2 number 1 seeds from each respective conference in MLS facing each other, like I mentioned before, for the first time since 2003. What I also should have added, and I'll state now, is that this will be the first MLS Cup for either club, and I think that's pretty sweet. They both finished on 67 points in MLS this season. Philadelphia actually had the better goal difference. They had more goals scored than anybody else and had the best defense in the league, which led them to countless awards. Goalkeeper of the Year, Andre Blake. Jacob Glesnes got Defender of the Year. Jim Curtin, their coach, got Coach of the Year. But LAFC is actually going to be the one that hosts the final because they accumulated more wins. So that is an interesting tiebreaker. Now, these are obviously the 2 most dominant sides, and I'm thrilled. And you know what? I'm so thrilled about it. I'm flying down. I'm going to shotgun cannonball my way down to LA. I'm landing at 10:30 a.m. I'm getting up to the Bank of California. I don't know how I'm getting there because traffic's going to be a nightmare and there's no parking. And so that's going to be its own adventure. So follow me on the Twitters or Instagrams at Jimmy Conrad as you track my adventure. But then I'm going to go to the game. I'm going to high five Heath and Charlie in person. That's going to be awesome. And I'm going to be treated to a hell of a game. And then I fly out that night. So yeah, dude, this is how I love big games, and I'm always in the hunt of big games. And if it's nearby, you got to make the trip to make it happen. So if you're going to be at the game, come say hi. We would love to meet all of our community in person.
Yeah, I would say that this is the first final in a long time where I am, and obviously I've got my personal ties to LAFC and I got personal ties to Philadelphia Union, but we got 2 number 1 seeds and teams that have been absolutely record-setting dominant, right? Steve Cherundolo with the most wins in a single season of a first-year coach. I think it was 21 wins or something in the season, broke Bob Bradley's record from, 20 years ago. You've got the insane amount of goals scored by Philadelphia Union. Just 2 top teams that we've seen. And if you listen to Don Garber's sort of State of the League yesterday, he talked about how these are going to be 2 new teams in a final, and like the stats about like any given Sunday type of thing of all teams have an opportunity to do that, which some people like. What I like about that, and I like that because it allows fans every year to be excited about their team versus like some baseball teams who haven't made the playoffs in like 60 years, but they just go. I like that part, but what I like most about it is 2 very different models, 2 different philosophies, some shared sort of consistencies within that, making it to the final, but being the best in the league all season long, going 1-1 out with Austin for a lot of that though, but going 1-1 for the Supporters Shield and to make it to a final. Those are the kinds of things that make this game exciting to me. Like you said, that no matter where I was in the world, I would make an effort to come to this game because I think it is an actual special one. And that beating that was it Orlando or Miami that beat Philadelphia some point late in the season, like 4 or 5 goals. That basically cost them the Supporters Shield. Now they're having to travel away to one of the most difficult stadiums to play in. It's just got really cool ties to it that I like. But more importantly, it wasn't like a team sneaking into the playoffs and they get
I like
rah,
that.
rah, rah to
I
a
like
final.
that.
I like 2 teams. They've been good all year long with their own plans. They've gotten better and better. They both went through their little mini dips, and now here they are, 2 1 seeds in a final. It's going to be great.
Okay, before I get to your prediction, I want everybody else to give us their predictions. Hit us up on Twitter. Hit us up in the comments right now. Who do you think is going to win this one? I love that this is probably going to be, to everything that you said before, they have distinct styles, different philosophies, but very successful in what they do. Consistently successful, especially over the last few years and since LAFC's origination. I love that this is going to be a great advertisement for the league. Now, we know that most finals can get a little stodgy, right? Everybody's a little nervous to take those risks maybe in the first half, but I do hope that it opens up. I hope there's an early goal to kind of release it. When my last MLS guy, I played in 2 MLS Cup finals, we scored a goal. So I was in Kansas City for 2004. We're in LA taking on DC United. Freddie Adu and DC United. Peter Novak's the coach. Ben Olsen's out there running around. Jaime Moreno. Like it's the old Ramondo's still in goal for DC. We score. We won. I honestly, in the 40 games we played that season, we must have won 1-0 15 to 20 times. It was insane how many 1-0 wins we had. We were just good at winning games 1-0. And but
that's a real trait though of a team though,
totally
being able to grind that out. And
we had the
sometimes
best
you score in the first minute, sometimes you score in the last minute, but you're always winning 1-0 or keeping yourselves in games.
Well, usually we scored in the second half, right? And we just felt comfortable. That was okay. We get 0-0. We're never rattled at halftime. But we scored 1 minute or 5 minutes into this MLS Cup final. And then we kind of looked around at each other like we never score this early. We have to hold the lead for 85 minutes. And we were a little bit uncomfortable. They scored 3 goals. One of them was a BS handball by Aleko Eskandari. I'm still bitter about it. But they scored 3 goals in 15 minutes. And it was 3-1 at half. And we were absolutely shell-shocked. We got it to 3-2. They had a red card. We couldn't score with the man up for the last 15. Had it gone to extra time or penalties, we would have crushed them because we just had that much more energy in the extra man. But they held on to beat us 3-2. And that early goal, I say that because that early goal really opened up the game. And it forced us to kind of play a little bit different. And I hope there's an early goal in this one because I think it'll do the same.
That's what leads me to my prediction. If Philly score first, Philly will win because Philly have this belief once they score, then they just open the faucets and they could literally batter LAFC with goals and confidence. They just become automatic. If LAFC score first, I think LAFC win this one. I do think LAFC will win this, but I will say that if I was LAFC, I would fear that first goal from Philly because they can beat anybody in the world if they score the first goal and they will run away with it. So I'm going to go with a 2-0 for LAFC.
You don't think Philly's scoring at all?
I don't know, man. If
Did
they
you
score
see- did
first,
you
I
see
think
what
they'll
they
win.
did?
But like,
Did you see what they did to NYCFC?
Yeah, I've seen what they did to everybody all season long.
Okay,
but, like,
NYCFC
they win
scored
those
first,
games,
and then they scored 3 goals in 11 minutes. I mean, they have.
Yeah.
I think both teams are scoring this one. I don't.
Yeah, but this one's away from home, and
I'm going. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Okay,
I think it's going. I'm going extra time. I think it goes to pens, and obviously it's a coin flip from there.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's what I think.
I don't think so.
I thought which would be a kind of a crummy way to decide a final like we had it last year. But these teams are so even. I guess in some ways you just have to decide.
I think the swing is that they're at home and LAFC have depth. They can change the way that they beat you in a few different ways. And because they're at home,
I love LAFC.
I think they're going to win this one. I'm going to say 2-0. But I do, like I said, I do think if Philly score first, then I don't think LAFC win this game. So
listen, I'm rooting for chaos. I want a 3-3 here, and I want to get all my money's worth for flying down for 12 hours and going back up. All right, everybody, that is the end of this final episode of this week of In Soccer We Trust. We'll be back at you with a couple more fun ones next week as well. We'll try to get a special guest on. We're obviously going to have an emergency podcast around the roster dropping on Wednesday, November 9th, right after the roster gets announced. So make sure you turn on your notifications after you hit like and subscribe on any of the places that you watch and absorb and consume this amazing podcast. So on behalf of producer Des, producer Alex, Charlie Chuck Wagon, Zimmerman Davies, Hollywood Heath Pearce, I'm Jim Conrad, saying thank you for listening and watching to In Soccer We Trust as always. And we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend. Later.